Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Taylor. I'm the Government Relations Manager for OPDC. Thank you so much for joining us today for our town hall to talk about the budget for the 27-29 budget development process. Let me share my screen and we can just go over the agenda really quickly. Great. So our agenda for today, we're scheduled for an hour. We're going to start with just a quick introduction and welcome, which is what we're doing right now. And then I'm going to frame the budget a little bit and talk about why we're here. Then our Ralph is going to go over the budget process and how we're going to build the budget for the next biennium. Then I'll do a quick restating of the goals and our next steps, and then a little bit about the comment process. And then we're just going to open it up for public comment. As you can see here, this is our info email. If at any time you can email the info at opdc.state.or.us. We're happy to receive comment there. If you don't want to make a public comment here, or if you have thoughts after the meeting, please send them to that email, and I'll be collecting those for the memo that I'm going to make for the commission after this. So just a bit to frame the budget process for the coming biennium. I really want to make sure we all understand kind of the budget realities that are coming. The governor's office and the chief financial office have provided directions to agencies for developing the 27-29 budget and our policy option packages. And really the direction's been pretty clear. It's very likely that there's not going to be any funding available for program expansion or new programs in the coming biennium. You can see here, these are quotes from the letter that the governor's office and CFO put out to agencies. And I think something that's important about these letters is that the governor understands that the requests that agencies are going to be putting in and the POPs and plans, they're not going to reflect the overall needs or vision for the agency or programs. So just because we might not be able to put in POPs that say, you know, we want this huge amount of funding for these programs to do this, doesn't mean we're necessarily saying that's, you know, the small POPs that we put in are our be all and all goals for the agency. And here on the right side, I think are kind of the goals of what we should be working on when developing these 27-29 budgets. We need to stabilize our core programs and services related to the agency's mission, self-fund and identify ways to self-fund strategic investments. That means finding ways within the agency that we can take money from one section to move it to strategic initiatives in other sections. Save, so scrutinize operational efficiencies. Edit, carefully evaluate new spending proposals, and then plan, and that's prepare for potential limitations on growth or expansion. When it comes to our policy option packages, these are kind of some areas of what a policy option package can look like. And in the next presentation about the budget, we'll learn a bit more about policy option packages, but this is just kind of to get you thinking about what policy option packages can be. They can be program expansions or new initiatives, investments in staffing or provider compensation, system modernization or technology improvement, structural or operational reforms, or reductions or efficiency proposals. So those are the type of things that we'll be talking about or looking for your guys' recommendations in the public comment period. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and turn it over to Mr. Amador if you want to present about the budget process. Well, I guess actually before we switch over to that, are there any questions about that short presentation I gave? Will the slides be made public? These slides are very similar to the slides that I'll be providing, well, were provided for the work group last week and will be provided for the commission meeting in the coming week. So they'll be available there. Okay, all right, go ahead, Ralph.
Lisa,
Yes.
are we going, but I believe on our website that we will be posting a recording of this meeting and also our meeting materials. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Shelley. Yeah, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the website, I believe, under stakeholder engagement. All right. Great. Go ahead, Ralph.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ralph Amador. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Public Defense Commission, and I'm going to walk you through a process for building and submitting the agency request budget at a high, at somewhat detailed level. I just want to assure you that I wish that it went as fast as we're going to go through this presentation, but again, we'll have available for questions at the end, and any time that you want to ask questions is quite all right. The next slide, so we're going to start with some guiding legislation. As some of you may know, and if you don't, it's listed here. ORS 151213 is section 1 was what put us in the executive branch of government. It was operative January of 2025. ORS 1512161F states that we need to submit a budget to the Legislative Assembly after the budget is submitted to the Commission and is done by the executive. Submitted to the Commission by the Executive Director and approved by the voting members of the Commission. Same statute, but Section 11, Commission shall request that the government include in the Governor's requested budget for each fiscal period the amount of funds identified for the Commission as being necessary to carry out the duties and activities of the Commission. And lastly, ORS 291-204 and 291-206 are statutes that provide guidance to state agencies for submitting budget information and completing the agency budget requests. Here's a basic timeline. It's kind of like a stair-step path, and this was shared with the Commission earlier in an earlier presentation, but it's kind of just kind of sets things in motion for what happens every even year in advance of the odd year legislative sessions. Step 1, which starts about January, we start building the agency request budget at a high level, and we start considering policy option packages and truing up where we're at. Step 2 is usually the May-June area, and that's when we start building our current service level budget, along with looking at preliminary policy option packages for the Chief Financial Officer, Department of Administrative Services to review. A lot of this is there's a lot of work that goes into this behind the scenes as far as building the budget, truing things up. We'll get into that in some later slides, but again, this is just high level of what we're doing as far as May and June. In June, using feedback from the Chief Financial Office, we refine the agency request budget, meaning that we start pricing out our policy option packages that are decided by the Commission and the Governor's Office, and really getting things moving. Between step 3 and 4, we submit our budget, our proposed agency request budget to the Commission for them to review and accept. And hopefully in August, at the end of August, our agency request budget is due to the Department of Administrative Services no later than August 30th. And we hope to have the Commission review and accept it at the August Commission meeting. From there, it goes to the Department of Administrative Services for their processes. And in December, the governor's request budget is released December 1st, in advance of the legislative session, which begins in the next month or so. Again, this is a timeline based on past practices, and there'll be some fluctuations in there, but this is generally just a big overview of what's happening throughout this year. So busy year for us. So this slide right here is talking about what the overall process looks like. We get our approved budget, which is what we'll get after the short session, and it's contains the most recent legislative decisions. From there, we build our base budget, which contains all the statewide adjustments, and it leads us to the path of building our current service level, which contains essential packages. Again, we'll go over these in the next slides. Refining what the budget includes. And agency request budget.
What are you doing?
The agency request budget has emergency boards and policy packages rolled into that, gets through commission approval. And then the governor's budget is what the final budget decisions are made. And what,
doing that?
can somebody
I was gonna
please
say,
mute or
how are you
could somebody
pulling
please
that
mute?
off?
Anyway, and the governor's budget, final budget decisions that goes forward.
Okay, well, I've got some news for you, and I want you to kind of get a hold of yourself a little bit.
Mr. Foster,
You're not
could you
gonna
please
be
mute
that
your,
good anymore on this case.
Lisa, Shelley?
I muted
Did you
him.
mute
Sorry,
him?
go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
thanks. Okay, this slide right here. So LAB to base budget. This is where the nuts and bolts start happening. LAB is referred to a few times, but there's a distinction between the two. We first get our legislatively adopted budget at the end of the long session in the odd years. That's what we usually get in July, and it's what we start our biennial process with. From there, we have several interim ways and means processes, usually September, November, and January, and e-board actions that get rolled into the even year legislative session. In that session, we have legislative actions that as a result of the short session, and any agency fixes that that need to be done to true that up. And what that does is it provides our legislatively legislatively approved budget, which is what we used as a starting point for our base budget. The base budget does things like it gets the net cost of position actions, does some base debt service adjustments, non-limited funding adjustments, capital construction adjustments, just a whole bunch of adjustments that we need to do to get ready to start building our budget as we go forward. We're currently in that phase of stuff right now as we're entering our budget process. So the big issue for us here is current service level. And current service level is essentially the additions and changes that we need to do as an agency to continue our current service level, but with some modifications. And that's done through a series of packages. And these packages are driven by the Oregon Budget Information Tracking System, commonly referred to as ORBITS in our world. And that accounts for inflationary changes, forecast cost increases, revenue changes, and other technical adjustments. It's a series of packages that are done in sequential order, and they build off of each other. So it's important for us to go step by step and make sure we don't jump out of steps or things will get a little wonky. We don't like to do that. Package 10, and this starts with the base budget. So when we get our base budget, we start with a package 10, which is the Oregon Position Information Control System, or ORPICS, automatically updates position costs so they reflect a 24-month period, which captures the inflationary changes and other identified salary adjustments. From there, we go to package 20, which contains two packages. Package 21 accounts for costs of phased in and phased out costs, which means that if a program starts mid-biennium, we have to phase in some costs to biennialize the process. And if it ends, again, we just make sure that everything reflects 24 months of costs for the next biennium. Package 22 accounts for one-time funding that expires in the previous budget. So if we have a one-time funding of a pilot project or something in this current biennium, we phase that money out before we build the next biennium because that money was only applicable to the current biennium. The next package is called package 30, which is pretty much our inflationary package. And this is system driven. So package 31 will calculate standard inflation and changes to state government service charges. It's already done by the system. We don't do a lot. We just got to make sure that it makes sense and that all areas are touched. Package 32 calculates above standard inflation, which is professional inflation and other nursing charges and stuff like that, that has to be acknowledged as higher than what standard inflation is. Package 33 calculates exceptional costs. This is usually things that weren't anticipated when the current budget was built that need to be phased in or phased out, or say a good example is rent that's on the market. So if we're leasing a building that's not a state-owned building, we'll have to make sure that our current lease and the agreed upon increases match what inflation is. If they don't, then we ask for an exception to true that up so that the agency has enough money to operate. The next package is it's called package 40. And that calculates the changes to mandated caseload. We have several mandated caseloads in our area, and this is takes the Office of Economic Analysis forecast for the Public Defense forecast, and puts a report out. We compare that so that we can get some changes to our forecasted areas, and it calculates that change. The next packages are package 50 and 60. Package 50 really doesn't apply to us because it's called a fund shift. And in rare occasions, it would apply to us. We don't have federal funds. So this is usually done to move general fund to federal fund and other things that happen. We don't really worry about that one unless we're, we don't really worry about that at all in this area. Package 60 is a technical budget area. So if we have to make changes to the agency structure or other things that need to be done to reflect differences in the next biennium, we would do that in the technical package, which is package 60. Agency reorganizations work in there. And then I have also listed in here is package 70. Package 70 is for revenue shortfalls. If for whatever reason, if we were depending on revenue from a outside source or as other funds, we would identify that as a package 70 shortage if we weren't going to expect that same money to get there. Then we get to the final path to the governor's budget. After we put together our current service level, we go into the modified current service level, which would take into account any package 70 stuff, and then we start building up on our agency request. The agency request budget has emergency board actions that happen after the short session and between before we submit to the budget in. It completes all the policy packages, which is the policy option packages, which we start in January, visualizing them, put in for the commission and the governor to approve in April, and then we start whatever goes forward. We build that out in May and June as far as pricing and putting them together for the budget package, and that's what actually happens in there. In the agency request budget, we also have a statutory requirement to put forth 10% agency reductions across the board for all appropriations. All agencies have to do that, and that looks a little tenuous and scary at times, but it is something that we have to put in there as we're building the budget. And there's other essential reports that are vacancy reports, staffing reports, IT strategic plans, stuff like that go into this agency request budget. And these budgets have to be approved by the commission and submitted by August 30th. After that step, the preliminary budget recommendations after submitted to DAS, it goes to the Department of Administrative Services, Chief Financial Office, DAS CFO, and they align our agency requests with all other statewide budget targets and make final budget decisions. There are times when we as an agency have to go and talk to them and defend some things and talk about some stuff in there, but it's usually a collaboration as it's getting ready, and they do all these steps so they can make an alignment to get it to present to the governor, so the governor can put forth, make final decisions on agency budgets, incorporate DAS changes, incorporate any changes to October forecast for mandated caseloads, and that's published on December 1. For sure. Okay, that leads us, after we turn it all in, then we got some specific challenges that we like to consider. And here's some challenges. The first challenge is the actual budget build starts 9 months before the session and 16 months before the even year session and 16 months before the final decision on the budget. Things you got to consider is there's changes to the economic and environmental landscapes that may affect the data. And it may appear that the actual cost of goods may not be fully accounted for just because the time frame that actually happens in there. We have to consider that the economy during the initial build influences what the agency needs are being addressed. Initial caseload forecast can be misleading and may change overall budget depending on revised forecast. And those several revenue forecasts occur during the entire period. I bring this up because we do an initial. So this April, we'll do our initial forecast for mandated caseload. We'll revise that with the October one, and then we'll actually, in the odd year or the long sessions, we'll actually do a final redo of the forecast to make sure we're capturing everything in April of the odd years as well. And there's a small window of small window at the start of the process to request changes to programs, policies, and agency business. This is when I referred to in January, April, we're start talking about our policy option packages and how we want to address things, which is why we're here talking to you folks today, because we want to get the word out and just say, describe you what constraints we're under and what we're talking about. We're only like 8 months into the current budget, may not be enough time to fully assess the progress towards agency goals of the current biennium. So that's kind of a sticking point for us, but I mean, the process is the process and we do our best to make sure. So, right now, we have windows of opportunity that we want you folks, not you guys, you folks to provide any input that you can. I mean, we have some guidelines as revenue neutral and everything else, but we'd like to know what your ideas are for any changes, any possibilities for new programs, knowing that they're budget neutral. And more importantly, we'd also like to know some suggestions for things that the commission maybe should not be doing. Are there ideas out there of things that we're doing that you don't think that we should be doing? Are there not that can be pushed out or pushed aside that are not getting the bang for the buck? Knowing that we're any changes that are going to cost some funds are going to need to be supported by something that you got to, in order to get something, you have to give something up. So that's where we're putting forth these suggestions that maybe we shouldn't be doing some things from your perspective. And I think hopefully I didn't go over my 15 minutes, but I'm going to say thank you and turn it back over to Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. Are there any questions about the budget process overall? Okay, great. Well, thank you. Okay, so just to restate kind of the goal of this meeting, as Ralph said, we're really looking to get your input on what you think the commission should be prioritizing in its budget. Another helpful way of thinking of this is kind of like a keep, start, stop exercise. So if you think there's something that's working really well in the commission that you'd like to see more focus on, we'd love to hear that. If there's something, a process or a policy that just isn't working at all, feel free to tell us. Richard, I'm going to mute you. Sorry about that. And then and so the next steps for this process is that after today's town hall and tomorrow's, which you don't need to attend both, they're going to be repeats of the same process. I'm going to be summarizing the feedback that we get here along with any submitted comments that we get. And I'm going to summarize that for the commission to present on at the meeting on the 18th. And then the commission on the 18th will also be going through a very similar process like this and like what it did at last week's commission work group, where they're talking about the budget build process for the coming biennium. Also, we are mainly focused on policy option packages or POPs here. However, if you have legislative concepts, so policy bills that wouldn't require funds, I'm happy to hear about those ideas as well. In fact, if them not requiring funding makes it more likely in this budget environment. So I'm happy to take those ideas too. So how we're going to take public comment, it's if you would like to provide public comment, go ahead and just raise your hand. If you're on the phone, if you hit *5, that will raise your hand through Teams, and Teams should keep an order going. So we'll be able to see who raises their hand first, and we're really just going to go through first come, first serve. I don't think we're going to have a timing issue since we have half an hour to go, and I think there's probably about 15 providers on this call or so. So, I mean, as long as you all aren't going for 10 minutes each, I think we'll be okay. But with that, unless there's any actual questions about the process, I'm happy to start with May Lee. Yeah, go ahead, May Lee.
Great, thanks, Maylee for OCDLA. I have 6 points which I've submitted to you in a letter. I will touch on them briefly because I want to make time for other people that don't have access to you to give their suggestions. And for OCDLA members on the call, this will be shared with you as well. Number 1 is to maintain and support law clerk programs. You know that public defense has to be competitive to attract law clerks. And so that means reimbursement for hourly wages, as well as housing and relocation costs, especially if the person will go to a rural public defense entity. Number 2 is to adequately fund the SPPE program. You all know the benefits of it. I think right now it is attached to MAC and it shouldn't be attached to MAC. The students who go through that program are able to come out minor felony qualified, and we're able to attract more people through the SPPE program. Number 3 is to ensure that graduating law students can enter public defense. We have a lot of social-minded law students now, but some of them still don't want to enter public defense. So for the people who want to enter public defense, we should really support them. There are now legislatively funded public defense clinics at the law schools, and those are connected to, Marion, Lane, and Multnomah counties. So it's natural for the students who go through those clinics to want to apply to the offices in those counties. And we urge OPDC to take a long-term flexible approach to ensuring that any law student who wants to enter public defense can, instead of saying that, a certain county is quote unquote over-resourced. We believe the over-resourced designation is problematic for many reasons. One, because it depends on MAC, and that is a fallacy and has recently been deemed unconstitutional. But number 2, we know that bar membership in Oregon and nationally is flattened, and the rate of retirements in Oregon will outstrip the number of people coming into the profession. This is for all sectors, not just public defense. Number 4 is to reimburse entities who recruit out-of-state attorneys. There's 2 ways to bring attorneys into the state. One is to grow them in state, and the other one is to attract out-of-state folks. So if an entity is recruiting out of state and can demonstrate that they paid for job postings out of state and that they brought attorneys on from out of state, those entities should be reimbursed for those recruitment efforts because they're helping public defense writ large. Number 5 is to pursue and distribute grant monies that will diversify your funding streams and take advantage for any money that's kind of sitting out there. One thing that we encourage you to look at is looking for grant monies for justice text or other similar AI programs that will help public defenders transcribe body-worn camera footage, interrogation videos, and jail calls. Law enforcement is currently using AI to transcribe their body-worn camera footage, and we should keep up, and you can help modernize public defense by doing that. Also, pursuing any money for training and recruitment efforts, and then distribute that to entities doing that work. And lastly, our 6th proposal is to prioritize investment in the most cost-effective public defense models. Nonprofits, consortia, and law firms have been around for decades, and investing in those will have huge benefits because those entities already have connections with the law school through the clinics, through externship programs, even through people mentoring students at the law schools. They have well-developed training programs. So if you support those people, we're actually supporting growing the public defense workforce. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I received your letter and we will be sure to include that. I'm putting in the chat here our email that you can submit comments to. Again, feel free to send in those ideas anytime now until probably end of day Thursday. And I'll be able to still get that included in the memo. Does anyone else have any comments? Oh, yep, Mr. Foster.
Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
1 second, we're muting a second computer in our room. Sorry about that. I would just like to echo what was said by our prior commenter. I'm a sole practitioner, and I represent a very large caseload of a court here, keeping people off the unrepresented list. And I have looked at bringing in a CLS to help keep that caseload under control. And from what I'm seeing, it's just not feasible to bring in a CLS because from what I'm seeing of the approval process, when I'm representing case by case, there really is no way that I can pull this off. Yet bringing in a CLS would potentially become a attorney after they get barred after graduation, and that's our best path to long-term survival of public defenders. So the funds to be able to fund that process, or even someone is going through the bar's alternative route to licensure, is another way that we should be funding incoming public defenders. So I really want to encourage the state to look at that, not only for the big firms that have the contracts, but also for the smaller firms that are doing the, unrepresented. Most of my work is off the unrepresented list, and we need to be able to use those resources too. And there needs to be funds for that. So when you're putting the budgeting together, we not only need to look at the policies of how that's done, but that there is funding to use those resources, because that is just the common sense of how we expand our long-term public defenses.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Reed. Hello.
Thanks, Lisa. I can be heard now, is that right?
Yes, we can hear you.
I was at a work group meeting a couple of days ago or late last week, in which one of the commissioners was talking about PCRP, and one of his concerns was that that program really created a two-tiered system of public defense for dependency cases, in which there were some jurisdictions that were heavily resourced, that there were mandated lowered caseloads, that there was increased funding, that salaries were higher, and that there were case management resources for those counties, while other counties would just have to make do. And while there was an anticipation that that would expand across the state, that stalled. And so there remains a two-tiered level of investment in those kinds of cases. And the thing that I'm the most concerned about in the direction that the OPDC budget is going is that it seems to be creating a two-tiered system of public defense for criminal cases, in which there is a heavily resourced trial division, which has considerably higher salaries than any of the public defense firms or consortia can offer, and that the benefits are significantly better. There's a workload model and additional support from the state for those attorneys. The workload model, separate from MAC, is something that I think this state may have to move to at some point, given the recent lawsuit. But the fact of the matter is that the state is, OPDC right now, OPDC is investing additional resources into that model, which is, according to the last report, not the most efficient or the most cost-effective measure of providing public defense services. We talked about a number of different things that the agency can invest in. One of the things that Mei Lee mentioned was providing funding for law students to be law clerks, to work in public defense. Right now, it's my understanding that OPDC is moving to fully fund law students in their trial division, while all of the other places that hire law clerks do so out of pocket, right? So like additional new funding outside of what's currently budgeted for the trial division is being budgeted for law clerks in a way that's seems disproportionate to the amount of funding that's provided to other agencies. The agency OPDC has in the past, in their their workforce development committees, has talked about repeatedly being able to support hiring classes so that we can engage law students in their third year of law school, support them and ensure that when they graduate and when they pass the bar, that there's space available for them at public defense firms. The ability to have a hiring class to hire early increases the quality and the interest and the dedication of the people who are applying for those jobs, right? And so if we are building a workforce for the future, the ability to recruit the most invested students in the law schools and being able to say, look, in September, we will have a job for you is something that the state OPDC has talked about consistently for years, but has never afforded the opportunity for any of the agencies to do so, right? So if one of the things that the contracts have done is specifically said, if you have a vacancy, we're going to take away your money. I would love to, if somebody leaves next week or 2 weeks from now, I would love to say, hey, I can hire a really, really, really well qualified law student coming out of law school if I can just start them in September or October, but the agency is going to take away the money. So if I don't fill that position, there's a likelihood I lose that. It's my understanding as well that the agency is hiring additional trial level attorneys, trial division attorneys up to 8. And I haven't seen the budget impact of that yet, but that's a lot of money, right? For 8 attorneys. And I think that money can probably be better spent in some of the capacity contracts. This budget cycle, I am asking that OPDC make a priority to allow all of us to recruit and retain the people that we have, right? Train, get people excited in the work, and not create this super special class of attorneys who get paid more and have better benefits than the rest of us. Thanks. It's the same work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you have any other comments? And I should have made this clear up front. We don't need a fully formed idea with a perfect solution that you know exactly where the funding's coming from. We're very happy to hear about just ideas that you like maybe the agency to work on. We don't need all the answers here. We just kind of need the direction you'd like to see us go in. Yeah, Saul.
Thank you, Lisa. I wanted to just be mindful of everybody's time and folks who don't always have a chance to communicate with the agency. I'm Sal Peralta. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Defense Consortium Association. First of all, I really appreciate the agency's willingness to hold these meetings. I think it's really helpful in terms of just transparency with regard to the process and the constraints with budgeting. Also, just in terms of the fact that you're asking for both short-term feedback and feedback related to long-term priorities of the agency. So I just wanted to offer a couple of thoughts for you to consider. The first is, I had the opportunity to listen to the conversation about PCRP last week at the commission work group. Really appreciated the conversation about that. I do think that it would be worthwhile for the agency to look at the marginal cost of expanding PCRP, both statewide and to additional individual counties. I agree with the comments that were made about the two-tiered system of juvenile public defense services and feel that the state should probably settle on the higher standard in terms of improvements in child welfare, court efficiencies, better outcomes, and hopefully reduced downstream costs. And then just would note that in a constrained budget environment, you could always do expansions incrementally and do that in targeted ways to help meet other priorities, such as facilitating attorney recruitment. So for example, if you're having a loss of attorneys in a smaller county for juvenile representation, making that county a PCRP county might facilitate attorney recruitment. And the agency's 2017 analysis did show potentially promising results, but obviously during COVID, there was no real appetite to do additional work in that area. And then subsequently, the agency prioritized transformation of adult criminal service model. I think revisiting juvenile public defense makes sense because it's far fewer providers than the adult criminal public defense service. So completing that transformation for juvenile providers would be comparatively inexpensive, given the potential opportunity cost. So I think that's something that should be considered. It also aligns with the agency's desire, and I think the desire for many in the workforce to shift to an open caseload model. Another thing that I'd like to just flag for the agency's attention is that the passage of Senate Bill 337 a few years ago envisioned a really different service delivery model than existed prior to the legislation, or the service delivery model that exists today following the partial rollback in the 2025 session. The 337 model contemplated a mix of hourly contractors, a few larger nonprofit providers, and then a substantial state trial division. And that shift was reflected in the share of cases handled by the hourly attorneys. It increased from about 4% of statewide caseload to 13 or 14% of caseload. And as the agency is moving away from that reliance, I think they should look at restoring staff to support the annual contracting model. So restoring analyst capacity would help facilitate that. And one thing we hear from our members is that it would be helpful to be able to have more contact with analysts. And I know the last legislative session, the analyst staffing level was reduced. And then I'd really like to second the comments that Richard made and that May Lee made about supporting training and supervision among all contracted providers. You have a lot of private firms and consortia that operate strong internal training and recruitment programs, but they don't get compensation for providing those. So you have small firms, all the way up to large consortia like Clackamas Indigent Defense Corporation that have formed pipelines to recruit and train law school graduates, but yet they don't receive any funding for that work. So from an equity standpoint, I think that they should look at potentially funding those. And I'd also note that those firms tend to have very low turnover rates, so it's a cost-effective way to bring people into the pipeline. And then the only other point that I'd make, and I think the agency's been very supportive of this already, is just making sure that the expanded caseload compensation program is maintained and publicized. The availability of that throughout the state, because right now we have several counties that are at capacity, but freeing up capacity within the existing workforce could help address some of that. So really appreciate the time and appreciate the fact that you're holding these meetings, and sorry to take so long with those points.
Not at all. Thanks for being here. Any other public comment? Yeah, Reed.
I didn't mention this earlier, but if there's not a lot of other folks, one of the things that continues to be a large budget item is us paying for discovery. Those are constitutionally mandated. It's not like they're printing things anymore. They don't have the paper costs. They don't have the same staffing level costs. I mean, it's really, really, really absurd that we are paying for things that are they're constitutionally mandated to provide to us. I know that this has been an issue for a long time. I don't know if that's, I mean, state TA budgets are big, police budgets are big. Chris Perosa is asking for $5 million to add more prosecutors in our jurisdiction. And we continue to subsidize some of their employees. I mean, if our discovery costs are subsidizing their employees, then that's maybe a line item that the county should foot, or that's a line item that the state should foot through a different payment level. But I didn't want to lose sight of that in a meeting about the budget.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other comments? Yeah, Mark.
Thank you. I think, there's been some discussion about the PCRP issue, and I think a big concern I had was during that conversation of the meeting last week was that there was talk of freezing payments to the PCRP providers, and I'm not quite sure, mid-contract, and I'm not sure why that would be recommended or even thought of, but if you're trying to keep recruiting and trying to maintain the public defender workforce, doing that, I think, would be an absolutely a huge mistake. And so from my perspective, there was a lot of reasons why there was the increase payments that were to juvenile providers. Part of it is requirement that we'd have staffing. There was also limitations of what other cases we could take outside of the contract at that time. And so there were, and also just the increased issues of trying to increase the representation levels. And so I think it's a good idea to increase everybody, but to freeze somebody and go to the lowest common denominator, I think, is a huge mistake, and I would hope the agency wouldn't move in that direction. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other public comment? James, go ahead.
Hi, James Comstock with Defense Investigators of Oregon. I won't reiterate the things that we've said at length in the letter that we sent. I would just note that we remain significantly behind market rate for investigator pay and significantly behind the equivalent of what we were paid in 1985. I realize that these aren't budget times that lend themselves to increasing rates. At the same time, fully funded investigators save attorney money, and I believe have a net saving effect on the budget. So I just refer you to the letter that we sent, but I didn't want to leave that unsaid.
Thank you. Right, any other public comment? All right, well, if there's no other public comment, we can wrap up a little bit early. Again, I put the email in the chat. If you have any other thoughts, please send them our way. We really appreciate it. And we will be holding another hearing session tomorrow, same time. And again, though, it's going to be the same format, so you don't have to attend both, though you're welcome to do so if you want to have another lunch hour with us. We always like seeing you all. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your ideas. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.